We want to remain a science of behavior, though, so that's what kind of we're hanging on to, being a scientific practice as well as a scientific research organization. So that's what drives me to making sure that we maintain those kinds of that kind of focus when we do our work out in the field. But we need to make sure that we are doing a good component analysis of what are the repertoires of the people who do masterful work in an area like teaching second graders in general ed, or in organizational behavior management, going into a company and improving the practices of the company, or training animals, or all the different areas of behavior analysis.
Welcome to the Cooperant Learning Podcast. We have another episode. I'm really excited about this one. Our guest, our topic are all just amazing. I'm very, very excited to get things started. Our co-host, as always, Dr. Steve Sparks. Welcome. It's good to see you.
Yeah, I had to let the facial hair grow out just was a little lighter, just so I can look as distinguished as our guest today, because I'm not able to quite keep up here. So.
Well, mine's more out of the fact I look like a toddler if I don't shave, or if I do shave. So that's mine. It's not laziness; it's more of a necessity at this point. But it's good to see you. You're getting over an illness, right, Steve?
Yeah, small children bringing home hand, foot, and mouth. So if I'm slurring my words at all, that's because there's still a little remnants going on there, but we're all right.
Well, I'm glad you're doing well.
Thank you
and
for
I'm
calling out my
excited.
toddler disease in front of everybody. I appreciate that.
Well, let me introduce our guest. I'm really excited to have him on. Joining us today, founder, executive director emeritus at Morningside Academy in Seattle, Washington. Founder and current director of Morningside's Teacher Academy, which operates as an international center for teacher education and coaching, internships, and instructional design training. He's an author, publisher at Morningside Press, which is a lab for developing instructional research methods, instructional methods, I should say, and instructional materials, and past president at ABAI. Dr. Kent Johnson, thanks so much for joining us today.
I'm glad to join you and talk about this exciting topic for me, and hopefully for you too.
I'm so excited too. I know very little about this, so I'm ready to learn. To most of our audience listening, you need no introduction, but to the few out there who may not know who you are, do you mind just taking a quick second and introducing yourself to everybody?
So I'm an educational psychologist, and I've been part of ABA since the first year. I've been doing work in behavioral education. I started a school, so I've got this whole entrepreneurial bent to my being, and we serve kids who are in the educational parlance tier 2 kids, so they're not kids with disabilities like autism or developmental disabilities, but they're not thriving in school either. I call them the forgotten 40%, the ones who just kind of, the tier 2 kids who they might have ADHD, or they might have a label or not. They might have mild learning disabilities. They kind of toe tap their way through school. Maybe you're one of them. They're they don't ring any bells for anybody. They're kind of your average kids, but they're not really catered to. They're not thriving, but that's school for them, and that's who comes to Morningside, and we build up their learning skills and their organizational skills, and catch them up in their foundational skills in reading, writing, and math, and thinking, reasoning, and problem solving. And we get them to be like top grade students. They go back to public school or private school, wherever they go, and they do really well. And so that's kind of a unique niche for us in behavior analysis. So we're kind of like the forgotten part of general ed, and we want our kids to be able to thrive in general ed too. So that's who comes to Morningside. We've been doing it since 1980. I've been participating in ABA forever. So anyway, that's me.
Well, our topic today, which you kind of introduced to me, before we even dive into that, it does kind of have to do with, the future, kind of laying the groundwork for things to come. And so, before we dive into it, I'm just curious from your perspective as someone who's kind of been around the block. You've seen multiple generations of behavior analysis and practice and standards change and all those things throughout the years. What shifts have been most meaningful or impactful to you? What parts of the field have remained constant to you over the years? How have we changed? What's your vantage point on that?
Well, we're kind of losing our way a little bit in sticking to the basic concepts and principles that defined our field originally. I think we're becoming largely a practitioner's field. There is a very healthy laboratory research base to our group. It's a minority of people in the field, but it's a significant number, and we're glad they're there. And a lot of BCBAs and a lot of programs there's 40 tier one programs in the ABA cadre now. So there's a lot more of us in there have ever been who consider themselves behavior analysts or people who run programs that focus on behavior analysis. And so that's really grown a lot because of the practitioners work in working with children with disabilities and autism. We don't want to we want to remain a science of behavior, though. So that's what kind of we're hanging on to, being a scientific practice as well as a scientific research organization. So that's what drives me to making sure that we maintain those kinds of that kind of focus when we do our work out in the field.
Yeah, I'll say one thing that it's kind of bothered me, and I'm probably a little prejudiced coming from a large behavior analytic, department where I was submersed in it. But there are a lot of people coming out as BCBAs that are great practitioners, and they know the science well enough to do the work, but are they truly behavior analysts in their view of the world and their view of the science as a whole? And I kind of question that at times.
Yeah, so we want them to, when problems arise in their service delivery, we want them to have a fluency around the behavior principles and procedures so that they can solve problems more effectively than sometimes they do now. So a lot of them kind of learn a protocol and then they kind of engage in it, but when problems arise, that's outside of that protocol. It's difficult for them to create the interventions that they need to do, and that's where we want to bring more mastery of the science of behavior to the table. And that's not going to happen with CEUs. I'm going to kind of get on my soapbox about that. But that's going to happen with training and development of competence and demonstrations, requirements to demonstrate proof that a certain skill has been mastered, and some of the ways that we consider the science of behavior. It's kind of like covered, by listening or watching during coursework or during the collection of CEUs, and that's not necessarily translating into any mastery of skill. And so that's really what excites me about this whole idea about micro credentials.
Yeah, I'll say I feel the same way kind of with passing exam, the BACB exam in the first place, where we have people that know the science very well, but if a question is written in a way that they've never experienced it, there's a terminology used that one or two programs use that others don't, and they don't recognize it. They're not making it through, but people that are just being taught to pass the exam, not to be good behavior analysts, are passing the exam. And I think having a fluency base rather than and I don't know how you do that. You can tell us more about that than I can
Yeah,
imagine, but seems
I'll
much
tell you
more
what we're
effective.
built. Yes, I'll tell you what we're building. We're not trying to mess with what the current processes that are in place now. So I'm not interested in trying to change processes that exist so much as building a better process, or I think a better process, or we think a better process, not just me. And then watching and then taking a grassroots kind of marketplace orientation to the development of micro credentials. You want me to get into, like, some people might not know what we're kind of bantering
Yeah,
about
it's a
that
perfect
term.
segue into what micro credentials are. I was unfamiliar, so go ahead. Yeah, let us know what those
Yeah,
are.
it's yeah, and there's a buzz in education and medicine for sure. You don't want a doctor who's not hasn't mastered their procedures. So, but in education, medicine, and information technology, those are three areas where there's a lot of buzz about micro credentials these days, and people are coming to grapple with this emerging uh, concept or principle of how one can develop competence in a field. And so it's through this micro credential process. So a micro credential is essentially an award that's given to someone who makes a short, verifiable presentation that demonstrates that they've mastered a specific and measurable skill. And so those components can be stacked into a composite micro series of micro credentials that could be akin to the expertise of a person in a particular area, like in uh, teaching children in classrooms or delivering services to autism. That's a whole bunch of micro credentials that we're talking about here. But we need to make sure that we are doing a good component analysis of what are the repertoires of the people who do masterful work in an area like teaching second graders in general ed, or in organizational behavior management, going into a company and improving the practices of the company, or uh, training animals, or all the different areas of behavior analysis. And a little later I can talk about uh, all these different areas where people are kind of grappling with how to develop micro credentials to demonstrate competence in those areas. But I'll come back to that. So we're talking about analyzing the performance of an expert into a series of components, and that we can define, and each component skill, if you will. When a person can demonstrate the skill, gets an award based on some kind of a proof or demonstration of the skill. So, and this is going on in education. There was a big article in Education Week. That's the kind of the newspaper. People in the field of education read this newspaper every week. Schools and teachers read it, and it's in the teachers' lounges, and it's like this major publication that is the newspaper for education, called Education Week. They'd had a big article on micro credentials back in May. Could this tool make teacher professional development more relevant? So more, and I'll just read a little bit of this opening in the article, and you might want to see if you can get a copy of it, or
Yeah,
I can send you a PDF of this article if that makes anybody's life easier to find it. It was
absolutely.
written by a woman called Caitlin Peetz, Peetz, and it was on May 6th in 2025. And just the opening statements in the article: more states are embracing micro-credentials as a form of professional development for teachers that's self-paced, ideally hands-on, and customizable to the skills they want to build or the subject areas they want to teach. It's a change that's happening gradually, and it's one that experts say can help make professional development more relevant for educators, and a tool that school districts can use to retain top talent. And it goes on from there. So that's kind of how people in in education are seeing it. I have another article here that, you go to any number of universities, they are starting to develop micro-credentials as part of their process. So here's one, Oregon State University. This came out in June. It's called "What is a Micro-Credential? Here's what you should know." And so they go over what one is, how does digital badging work, and I want to come back to that very
Yeah.
important part of what a micro-credential is all about. How do I earn a micro-credential? How do I use a digital badge for my career? How do I get my money's worth out of a micro-credential, and so forth? So there's a whole article on Oregon State University published this article, and I can send you that. That's just an example. You go to any number of universities are starting to, get in line with this buzz that's happening. It's happening in medicine and information technology too. So, so that's what. So we've developed. So at ABBA, Steve Eversole. I don't know if you know Steve. He has a company called BDS, Behavior Development Solutions. He got cooked. He got turned on to this because he travels in professional circles like education circles and medicine, and he provides services to those fields outside of behavior analysis. And he was saying to ABBA, "Hey, you know about this micro-credential thing? Like, do you want to do something?" You know, if we, BDS, developed some micro-credentials, would ABBA recognize our micro-credentials? And that got us on the executive council at ABBA kind of thinking about this. I immediately saw this buzz around micro-credentials and an opportunity to bring instructional design and the old programmed instruction and mastery learning back to our field, which well, I think we really lost our way in that regard back in the 60s and 70s when mastery learning was a big thing. We developed a whole higher education system in behavior analysis called PSI, a personalized system of instruction, or the Keller plan, or how people called it in different ways, different names, where students would work on learning skills, and then they would make an attempt to demonstrate their knowledge or their ability to implement a particular skill or their knowledge about a skill, and they would be evaluated with a rubric. And then if they could engage in the skill, then they would be saying, okay, you got mastery. So now you're on to the next unit in the class. And the college classes are broken down that way. And there's still some of that hanging out in behavior analysis, but I'm not here to kind of promote PSI so much as to talk about the kind of the essential ingredients of that as kind of a way to learn and demonstrate mastery on a skill by skill basis. And that's really what we're talking about here. So I saw this movement as an opportunity to hitch a ride. That's a big thing that I like to do when I'm thinking about spreading behavior analysis out in the culture. I'm always looking to hitch a ride. So what's going on in the culture that could be a means for us to get on board with something we've got to say that is already has some familiarity with the community at large out there, rather than trying to go out and tell them all about some technical terminology or procedure, that's foreign to them. That's not how movement culture works. So, I'm a sociologist too, as well as a psychologist, and I studied movement culture at Georgetown, and I see how you spread a movement, how you in a culture by bringing more and more people into the fold of people who say, "Oh, that makes sense." So here's all these people doing micro credentials. Well, now that's our opportunity to say, "Hey, here's how you can actually teach to mastery. We have some procedures that you can learn from us that will help you, will facilitate your your objective in terms of bringing micro credentials to your field, whatever that field may be. So I saw this as a way to another hitch a ride opportunity. So that's what I got involved in. Claire St. Peter, who was also on the executive council of ABBA at the time, was also very interested in this. She's a professor at West Virginia University, and she and I kind of ran with Steve Eversol's inquiry, and we formed a task force at ABBA, and several people got on board on the task force, and we developed a survey for the membership, and in 2022, and people were like, there was an explosion of responses from the community, of ABBA community. 300 different kinds of micro credentials were proposed by people in members of ABBA. Hundreds said they would be very interested in learning how to develop their own micro credentials, and 2/3 of the respondents who managed businesses in our field. There's all these little therapy businesses out there catering to children and adults with autism and developmental disabilities, for example. 2/3 of them said they would be very likely to consider micro credentials in their decisions about hiring employees. So there was like this, at least on the abstract level. Wow, there people. This is not something that people would have to be cajoled into considering. So, because it's very easy to explain it. It took me like 20 seconds, right? It's an award for demonstration of a skill, like an expert would engage in the skill, so it's got all the ABCs and it's got the antecedents. So you engage in the skill, and in a certain context, you engage in the skill, and then, you demonstrate the outcome of a reinforcement process and a shaping process. And you got a rubric, and you check, you're checking off to see if the person meets the standard. I just, it's just, and what's wonderful about it is everybody's worried about, people out in the culture at large are worried about fraud. So, that's a big thing in our culture, unfortunately. So people want proof. And so how do you know that you proved? How do you know that? So there's these agencies. So the proof, let me get back to that proof a little bit. So it's a short, like you might make a short video of demonstrating a certain skill, right? Or depending on the skill, it might be a written document or recorded audio presentation or some performance-based demonstration, depending on the micro credential. Okay, so you make that, and then somebody's watching. You send it to them, or you do it in person, or you send it to them. I can imagine people going to workshops to learn a skill, and then they can't do it yet. They go home, they practice, they till they can engage in it successfully. Then they send the video to the trainer, and then the trainer has a rubric, and then they can certify that, and then you get this badge. All right, this digital image, or this badge that has the earner's name here. Here's a picture of a badge here.
And this is blockchain technology, right?
Yes, that's what I'm getting into. This is the third party vendors are already, there's already these blockchain technologies that store these things so that you can't make a counterfeit. Uh, so Credly is the name of one of the companies. A Credible, ACCREDIBLE, Digitary, and then there's some low cost kind of homemade ones, like at the University of Hawaii, Jennifer Ninchi and her colleagues had their own little kind of, they developed a micro credential for supervision. And so they have their own little storehouse of ways that they know that the microcredential is authentic. So it's kind of a low cost way, because Credly and Credible and Digitary, those three companies trying to make money. Yeah, and of
Sure.
course. So each micro-credential contains a metadata stored using a distributed ledger or blockchain technology, and it's programmable, secure, anonymous, unanimous, distributed, time-stamped, immutable, all the kind of the features. It allows valid credentials to be shared and accessed via social media and other networks. And then it has the badge has the person's name and their skill and other kind of tag, whatever kind of tags you want to put on it. So if someone, so we don't want ABBA doesn't want to start developing micro credentials. We don't have the resources. And certainly even if the BACB was interested in it, they don't have the resources to develop. How many micro credentials are we talking about? We're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. The members came up with 300 just off the top of their heads. So each skill area.
Yeah. So Kyle, go ahead and make them all
areas
for us real quick, just so we can start getting them out.
I'll make a few.
Yeah. So there's OBM, there's adult and clinical practice, there's experimental analysis of behavior, there's behavior pharmacology, there's behavioral neuroscience, there's applied animal behavior, there's community and social and sustainability area. Now, all of these areas are showing some interest in developing micro credentials, and I'll come back to that in a minute about what's going on out there in the field already. But it's just really exciting to me that we can do this and this survey of people. So it isn't our goal to be in charge of this whole top down thing is not what I'm talking about, and that's not how I've ever done any politics or anything. Ever. I'm a grassroots kind of marketplace guy. We're like, okay, whoever wants to go after it, do it, and people will use them or not.
Yeah.
So I had a question kind of Asha on that. Obviously, if you have a bigger program or university based, it's trustworthy. What is ABBA looking at potentially doing almost like accreditation through the different universities for their programs to accredit any of these, or we just kind of assume that someone is doing the good work behind it and it's legitimate?
So what is ABBA doing? Okay, now that's a good question. So, we have a nonprofit arm of ABBA. Actually, I'm the president of that now. In my third year, I was the president of ABBA last year. Now I'm the president of SABA. So the Society for the Analysis of Behavior, Society for the Advancement of Behavior Analysis. And that's SABA. That's a nonprofit arm of ABBA. So it's the 501c 3 or 6 of ABBA. And we have money. So people to make donations to ABBA all the time. We've got millions of dollars and we give it away to people all the time. So we have an award system that people apply for our awards. And last year we gave $10,000 to Ray Jocelyn and his colleagues at West Virginia University to develop micro-credentials for the good behavior game. Then we gave $10,000 to Odessa Luna and Inu Choi and Michelle Traub and that group at St. Cloud State University. They're developing micro-credentials for how to collect data on BCBA trainees' interpersonal skills during professional interactions.
Hey, that's a good one.
And then that's a good one. And then Catherine Williams and her colleagues at University of North Carolina, Wilmington, they're working with teachers in school districts, and they're teaching the teachers how to categorize types of learning from the objectives that the standards that they have in the school district. and how to identify the kind of learning that each represents, and then protocols for how to teach that kind of learning, whether it's concepts or chains or principles or strategies or whatever it is. And that's right out of programmed instruction, too. That was what Susan Markle and her colleagues, Phil Team, and they developed a whole program of kinds of learning during the programmed instruction days. So this whole micro-credential thing is kind of resurfacing some old juicy stuff from programmed instruction and instructional design that we developed it in our field decades ago that kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So I'm really excited about. So those are three groups that are out there now. At Morningside, we've got two that we're developing. Micro credentials and how to chart behavior on the standard acceleration chart, and then how to do what we call board work, which is an explicit instruction method for teaching new skills to people, which we call board work. And then I told you about Jennifer Ninchi out of the University of Hawaii. She's done one on supervision and excellence in supervision. Then there's Tim Slocum and Chris, a bunch of people. I don't know if you've been tuned into the single case research design conference that would just happen recently in Minnesota. Well, Morningside had been feeding money to Tim Slocum and his colleagues at Utah State to develop a process for us to come to terms with what is good single case research design. See, APA, American Psychological Association, has been doing that with group design, and we thought in our field, well, we ought to do the same thing, is examine our processes and come up with standards for saying what is good group design, and we'll do it for single subject design. And so we've been Morningside's been giving grants to that community to develop single subject design research methods. And then Morningside gave ABBA a bunch of money to put that conference on that happened this fall in Minnesota. And so out of that will come a stack of credentials, micro credentials for people who are expert at developing good single case, single subject designs. I know Claire St. Peter at West Virginia University, she became the chair of that psych department there. So she's kind of swamped in chairship. She's got the chair blues. She's doing work with Vicky Tucci's group, the Competent Learner Model, which is one of the models for offering services to children with autism, the CLM model. They're developing micro-credentials for Competent Learner Model. So that's 8 out there. Yeah. And then I've been talking with Mitch Freiling and Linda Hayes, who are the program coordinators at ABBA. And so when you come to ABBA, this next ABBA, if you come to the convention in San Francisco, you'll see a whole new series of events in the program that are not symposia or panels or individual presentations but they're going to be called skill building sessions. And so it's a kind of an approximation, to once you have worked out a 90-minute skill development presentation that you can deliver at ABBA, where actually you'll go to ABBA and you'll go to a skill building session and you'll be trained and practicing a skill during that 90 minutes. That can then eventually turn into a micro-credential process too. So we got 55 submissions to the convention this year for skill building sessions. And we said we were hoping that we get 10. We got 55 people submitting in all these different areas of behavior analysis. So I'm just really excited about that. So the area coordinators are now reviewing those applications, and then I'm going to look at the applications that the different area coordinators select, and I'm going to Mitch Freiling and I are going to look at those and see how well they approximate what we're envisioning as skills worthy of developing micro-credential programs from. So I think this is just catching on. This is a way I like to see our field move forward.
Yeah.
Not in a top-down kind of way. I know the test, the top-down people, the test will still be there, and people will still have their license and all this, but that's not related to any skills. You could have a BCBA, and that doesn't mean that you can engage in any specific skill.
Yeah, I'll give you an example and why I think this is so important, and that's why I was asking about how to prove legitimacy of some of these things. If it comes from, like, say we were to make our own micro credential and nobody knows,
Yeah.
are we full of it or not, but our work doing functional behavior assessment, writing behavior plans, and we're starting to see behavior analysts who are traditionally coming from an autism center, that's their area of competency, and they're using 15 questionnaires and writing full behavior plans just based on those answers. And they're not effective. They're not like, these questionnaires were designed just to guide you in designing your assessment. It's like pre-assessment. And
Right.
so it's giving our field a bad name, and people are wondering, why are they able to do it so much cheaper than we are? Well, because they're
And
not
it's
really
not a
doing it.
behavior now. It's not behavior analysis.
No, it
Yeah.
is not.
What
Yeah.
is it? It's just
Yeah.
like that.
We're actually designing a computerized program to walk people through the FBA process, just to hope at least they'll be able to do a full assessment if they do that,
Well, you could turn it into a micro-credential. You could develop a program. People would study it with you. They would develop their behavior plans. They would submit them to you after your workshop or your trainings, your Zooms, or however you do it. And then you would have your rubric, and then you would certify people, and you would start giving them micro-credentials, and it's just going to catch on. So I just think that's the way. When you study in sociology, you study movement culture, you see that's how this works, and you don't try to get all top down about whether you're meeting, some standard right away. You get people say, "Oh, well, look I can develop a behavior plan." Guess what? The behavior plan that I developed with Dr. Sparks, guess what? It works compared to some other behavior plan that I developed, which doesn't work. So, I just see this whole thing, if it keeps catching on and we keep kind of, ushering it along and bringing people into the fold in these different ways, like this whole skill building session at ABBA is a perfect kind of breakthrough, that we'll have these sessions at ABBA, and then all those people who do those skill building sessions can also learn how to take that work and turn it into a micro-credential process. They can be taught about it Credulity and all the different places, blockchaining places, Credible and Digitary and all. And then they can charge fees for their services that cover the costs of storing the proofs in those places. And then we have a whole other thing going on in our field,
Yeah, we'll have to check out a couple of those. I know we had wanted to do a couple presentations this year, and weren't aware of those training sessions, so we were underprepared. And then I'm too full of hot air. I couldn't say anything in 20 minutes, and so we decided to hold off on some of the shorter presentations. But we'll definitely check those out, so we have a plan for next year. And for anybody listening, we'll have a table set up with some fun stuff to give away if anybody wants to stop by and see us at ABI this year.
Yeah,
that would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great. So yes, don't get up and blab. This is kind of that's we have enough of that. And everybody's sitting there collecting their CEUs, sitting in a chair, listening to people blab in a symposium. It's just kind of some. Sometimes I want to sit around and listen to talk, a conversation, be stimulated that way. If I want to learn a skill, that's not how I'm going to learn a skill.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, And that I do think that's important to mention too, is there's a lot of what was being presented over the years that wasn't really building any skills.
No.
But I still will miss out on, and I'm going to call out Tom Rakos here, because he did the presentation on Rorschach and tarot card readings like several years ago. And if you're not into that level of behavior analysis, then I feel bad for you. So we've been trying to get him
I
on, but
do.
he's too busy.
I do have a question, and maybe this, I know you've
Yeah,
been harping
please.
against the top-down model, so maybe this sounds a little top-downy. So I don't want
No,
it to
that's
sound that way.
okay.
But
That's okay. That's how we've trained to. That's how we're trained to think right now. Trying to have a breakthrough.
I'm undoing all that learning right now. But is there is there an argument? So like if I'm an educational institution or I'm a private company, is there an argument for there being at least some sort of standard or some sort of like making sure that what we are putting out there as a micro credential stands to some level of some sort of like this is behavior analysis or this is not behavior analysis. I know Abba's involvement a little bit can help with that, but is there something like what we don't want is just a bunch of people just making kind of like a money grab and them not being held to some sort of standard or level of
Yeah,
quality? Is there an argument for that?
why do you want to impose that? Why don't you impose that on CEUs? What are you
Yeah,
talking about?
that's true.
So why are we asking this question about about micro credentials? Well, we have this wildly way of maintaining our licenses and our credibility by sitting in a chair listening to somebody blab. I just think that's just, I won't say it's fraudulent, because it's just it's part of the way we do things. So we latched on the CEU thing because that's what people do. They do it in speech and language. They do it in, all the different practitioner fields that have practitioner components. That's what they do. So that's what we do in ABBA. And I'm like, here's something else we can do. And then they can do that too, maybe if it catches on. But I don't see who's going to come in and say, this is not a good micro credential, or this is a good one, or how are you gonna, manage I mean, I think the verbal community, I trust the verbal community to say, don't get it from them. It's happening. Get it over here. These are the people who are going to teach you how to do something, right? So it's going on now with the online courses,
That's true.
like look
Yeah.
Yeah.
at, just look at them. I mean, people are losing traction on some of these programs aren't surviving. I think
Yeah.
it's a more evolutionary process like that. So,
You're blowing my
you
mind
can
here. So
the logic. So Kyle, the logic is oh, well, what is the standard
Mhm.
for engaging in the good behavior game? Well, uh, I don't think there is one specific way that I can say I'm doing the good behavior game. I think, these are based on principles that have a wide variety of variation depending on the context and so forth, that are still hold true to to the principles. And I think that's the way our field should be developed. I don't think we all look the same. The direct instruction people tried to do this too. Like they got way too specific about what the way to signal the children in the unison responding, like, no, you bring your arm around this way, not like this way. Like that's not, don't get carried away with topography.
Yeah.
And so so anyway,
Just to piggyback off that, I've started using the good behavior game and redesigning it for group homes for staff and for the consumers who live there to increase pro-social and the behavior we need to see. And
excellent.
what I've found in doing that and in classrooms is, if you're just doing a one size fit all, like plugging in this program, it does not work anywhere near
No.
as well as if you are
Right.
programming to fit your need. And even with token economies recently. I've been working with some of our younger BCBAs, brand new CBAs coming out. And I'm like, all right, use a token economy there. Explain to me why. And it's not that it wasn't a good usage of it, but we need people to have an understanding of why to use it. How do you tweak it to make it effective? Not, hey, here's a token economy that works. I'm just going to use it here, because it may
That's
not work
right.
in that way.
Here,
Mm.
here. I'm all with you on that. And that's what, what when you go down to get a micro credential on the good behavior game down at West Virginia University, that whole program is going to be talking about the wide variation that's possible. Like, how do you do a needs assessment in an organization? There's another micro
Mm.
credential. There's not one there's not one way to do that. It depends on the composition of the organization. So that's good. I'm glad to hear, just incidentally, Steve, about bringing the good behavior game to group homes. That's excellent.
Yeah, it's been
Excellent.
fun to play with, and seeing, especially as we work with probably as many people with mental illness diagnoses than we do in the developmental disability
Sure.
side, and it
Mhm.
works just as well as long as you can find the right motivation. It works very well.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, it's just that's
It's been a
exciting
it's
application.
been a challenge to get owners to implement with staff, though. That's been the challenge. It's like, why do we need to motivate them to do their job already?
There's always
That's
that
been the
oughta
barrier.
wanna do the right thing, which
Yeah.
get brings us full circle back to the students you're working with. Is I was always one of those students that, "Oh, you oughta wanna do better," but, then all the attention goes to the top performers, or the people that are throwing chairs across the room, and,
That's right.
I didn't even know I knew how to learn until I made it to college.
That's right. So that the thrivers and the chair throwers they suck up all the time attention. It's an attention economy, we know that that's really the name of the game these days. There's just so much out there that who's going to get the attention of who.
Yeah,
So, this tier 2, this middle forgotten 40%, they get nothing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
Yeah.
I get you.
my wife's listening in the audience here, so I always have to call her out as she was that top performer, math and science
All
center
right.
for the attention. So she was not getting ignored while I was barely graduating high school. So
Then you were smart to hook up with her. That
right,
was
yeah.
it's like you hitched a ride on a thriver. That's good. Good.
Do you see micro credentials kind of in the future being a supplement to CEUs then, or replacing CEUs, or what's the future
Let's see
there?
where it goes. I think that, if those who have a micro credential may do better work than those who got a CEU for the same thing. And so we're going to see how this plays out in the marketplace
Mhm.
for employment. Who are you going to hire? uh,
Yeah.
you know, and so I won't say that there aren't people who can't sit in a chair and listen and watch and do something really well. I'm not. I pass no judgment on that. I just don't think it. I'm as a behaviorist. I'm all about efficiency. So that's what the
Mhm.
constructivists say to me in the schools of ed. Oh, you're a behavior. You're one of those efficiency people. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, yeah. Well, that's if it could, if the person sitting in the chair learns it eventually, it could be many days or weeks later than the person who goes to the micro credential training program and gets the micro credential. So, let's do things efficiently too, So I'm not saying that the CEU isn't gonna work. The question that you're asking is kind of as a behavior, how does a behaviorist like me live in the world of teacher ed? Well,
Mm.
it certainly isn't by trying to tear down the constructivists. That is just so silly, And then get on my high horse and tell them how it sucks what they're doing. It's just not.
Mhm.
It's not it. And so I feel like I'm not gonna. The CEU that lives and exists. There's no way that I'm gonna tear that down. And that takes me away from building up this other thing
Mhm.
that I think has more eventually will be more successful because it does a better job, that in my opinion.
Yeah, I can see how you'd almost have to maintain it because you need a lot of micro credentials to be available before it really could supplant that. But I do like the
Yeah.
idea that you brought up of it being kind of the cultural evolution, the culture behavior analysis is what's going to really control this. Because my first thought is it's probably been close to 8-9 years now, but I think it was when we were in San Diego for ABA one year, and overheard a couple of brand new BCBAs walking about how they like kind of bragging to one another how they BS their way through school and passed the exam and now they're going to be working. And my first worry is, okay, how do I know that I'm not hiring that person? They didn't find someone that would just give them a micro credential. But as you're saying, if you start finding those places that will do that, then you're just not going to trust their micro credential. You're going to be looking for the others who actually put out some good performers.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's a process. That's what teaching teachers is the same thing. It's a long. I'm in for the long haul. You gotta have keep hope alive. And that's just not happening enough. We just don't. Like I keep my hope alive and keep doing my work. And now we've got 55 people applying to run a skill building session that can eventually be turned into micro credential process. We're giving this money away. We're going to give away more money this year. So for those who might be interested in developing, we have a micro credentials and behavior analysis grant from SABA this coming year. So the submission deadline is January 14th. So if
Okay.
you go to the ABA website and you look at the grant submissions, there's one in there for micro credentials, and we give a lot of, I don't know, maybe this is a little sidebar here, but ABA gives money for international development grants, senior student presenter grant, innovative student research grant, innovative student research grant in diversity, equity, and inclusion, the Sydney W. and Janet R. Bijou grant for developmental behavior development, public awareness grants, and now micro-credential grants. So there'll be more grants awarded this year, but the deadline again is January 14th. So if you want to submit for a pile of money here and do a good job, uh, we look forward to your application.
We are nearing an hour, believe it or not. But if there are any resources to any BCBA listening out in the audience who's like, I've never heard of micro credentials, I want to dive in and read more. Do you have any recommendations of places to get on the internet? Or you've mentioned a few already, but where should I start if this is the first time I'm learning about this and want to know more?
So I would say I mentioned an Ed Week article. So how do I what do I say you read? That's a good question in that's specific to behavior analysis. So what's coming what's coming so go to the convention. There's going to be these people we awarded grants to from St. Cloud and University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and West Virginia University are going to be in a symposium that I'm going to chair that symposium on their micro credential programs. So that's going to be, and then I'm gonna develop a guest issue in one of our journals, maybe POBS, one of the behavior journals, where I'm going to invite those people to, and I've got a paper almost finished on what is a micro credential,
Okay.
and we're going to publish those. But right immediately now, what to read? I can't. It's just emerging.
Yeah, yeah.
Go
You've given us a lot
again.
already.
Yeah, I don't know what exactly I could tell you to do, but just to keep in touch, keep in touch with me. That I could say that Kent at morningsideacademy.org, and I can we can have a group, where I kind of tell people who are interested, hey, here's when the symposium's going to be at in San Francisco. Here's where the papers are going to get published and so forth. So I could make a little club, I guess. Uh, in my free time. That'd work.
There you
Go
go.
to university websites, and I just mentioned Oregon State, or if you're in education, Education Week, or I don't know what else I could say. It's new, and you guys
Yeah,
are right on. You guys are right on the cutting edge too, and I really
there you go.
appreciate this opportunity to talk about something that's really brand new. That we're gonna try to we're really making some hay on bringing micro credentials and mastery learning and skill development to uh, back to behavior analysis full force.
Fantastic. We were super excited to have you. So we
Yeah.
can, oh, go ahead, Steve.
I just really, I think we all do, but I really appreciate your work on this project too. I know that I think it's like 10 years ago, it was brought up randomly at the Analysis Association of Michigan conference. Like, all right, what are we going to do with these individuals who have a BCBA, but they don't, have a specialty in any area yet? They're working outside their competency, and you report them, and how do you prove that they don't have the competency? And, and then that conversation just died out like 10 years ago. And so it's great to hear that it was still moving somewhere in the background.
Yeah. Yes. Well, we
Mhm.
waited to see, where it's happening, and then we're gonna jump in and hitch a ride and make this fly in our own field. Absolutely.
Well, Dr. Kent Johnson, thanks so much for joining us at Cooperant Learning, and we look forward to seeing more about micro-credentials in the future for sure.
All right, good. Nice to talk with you all.